Good afternoon, everyone, and I welcome all of you to the second session of the day. Today, we have the honor of having Dr. Supratim Chowdhury with us. Sir is Associate Professor, Department of Fish Processing Technology, West Bengal University of Fishery Science, Kolkata. And the topic chosen by our esteemed guest for deliberation today is biosecurity in aquaculture production systems and its role in global food security. Sir, you are audible, visible, and your presentation is also visible. And the session recording has started, and you can start. You can start,
Uh,
sir. You're audible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all the participants. So already I have been introduced and the topic is already introduced to you. So let us begin uh, today's topic. So uh, biosecurity is a very big issue nowadays. That is basically because aquaculture has over the period of time gained a lot of importance for us. So we'll be starting the session with a brief idea about what actually happened over the years, starting from like 1968. As you could see, most of there were 94% of the fish that are meant for human consumption that used to be contributed by the capture fisheries, and only 6% came from aquaculture. But as we moved on, as we reached 2008, we find that it's almost caught up equal. Where like 56% was contributed by capture and 44% was done by the aquaculture from the aquaculture sector. And very recent, whatever I had from FAO data, that is in 2018, this figure is now above 50%. So we have 52% of the capture fish of the fishes coming from the aquaculture sector, which human beings consume. So this actually gives us an idea about the importance, the growing importance of the sector. And since this sector has gained importance, since most of the food fishes meant for human consumption comes from aquaculture sector, naturally the safety issues and the related safety issues, particularly in terms of the human beings consuming such produce, naturally has become a focus of our of the regulators globally. And see, if you look into the export figures, or if you look into the production figures of the different states of our country, even the trend in exports, you'll find that this most of the produce are from the aquaculture sector, and not only that, it is gaining much more impetus day after day. This and whenever it is aquaculture produce as an issue, so its safety issues are also important as well. Because when we are doing aquaculture, it is something that is under our control. Some of the issues, some of the factors, some of the parameters of aquaculture production are of course under our control. And if we take some basic states, or if we interfere with the production process a bit more, uh, then of then I think the all the factors that may affect human as human health can be eliminated, can be reduced to a greater extent. So what we are trying to establish now is that the aquaculture has always been one of our major contributors for fish as human food. It is not only for human food in our country, but also for export market. Again, it is one of since it is the primary food is coming from aquaculture sector. So whenever we talk about the safety of that food, so naturally we have to concentrate on the different aspects from where safety issues may arise. Now this is a general practice, aquaculture practice we follow. We start with whenever we go for a culture of a particular species, we start with the hatchery. So we have the brood stocks. From there, we in the hatcheries we get the eggs. From there, the larval rearing occurs. Then we go for the farming, which may be extensive farming, intensive farming systems, or maybe that nowadays we are looking forward to smart aquaculture systems. So whatever is the thing, so first we start with the hatcheries. We then we move on to the rearing systems, and finally we get the pond where the grow out occurs, and then the harvest. So this is the natural flow of the fish in an aquaculture system. Each of these stages contribute to some problems, not only to which may be problematic not only for us, for the humans who consume those fishes, but also for the environment. Now, see, if you look into this diagram, you can identify what are the problem areas that we normally face in aquaculture sector. In terms of the production in aquaculture, one of the problem is, of course, the predation. So predator control program is an issue where, in order to get better productions, we can have problems with non-native species. Several non-native species can be introduced in our country, which has been not only done in India, but also in abroad. Other countries also the same problem arises where non-native species has been introduced. And from this aquaculture farms, if this non-native species gets out somehow, it escapes out of that containment of the aquaculture system, then it will get into the natural habitat of the country and can have an impact on the indigenous population of fishes. So that is another big problem, an outcome of the aquaculture practices. Then, with the intensification of the aquaculture, what we have is disease outbreaks. Very often we have disease outbreaks in both shellfishes as well as finfishes. To overcome those situations, what we do is we apply drugs, we apply antibiotics, we apply hormones, then several growth factors, which sometimes may or may not be within the limit of the acceptability for humans. So these antibiotics, these hormones can, over the period of time may get accumulated in the fish muscles, which ultimately we consume, the humans consume. So that has a long-term impact on our health. So it's not only our health, it is not only about the environment, but also the production of the aquaculture system, which faces many, many, many problems. There is another big issue which comes from the application of pesticides. Now, this as pesticide application may not occur directly into the aquaculture system, may not be like we may not have applied it directly to the pond system. But herbicides or pesticides may also come from agriculture runoff. Now, this get concentrated again in fish muscles and eventually gets root into human beings, which is also harmful for us. Then the how the product of aquaculture, the waste products of aquaculture, which may be in the form of the water itself, maybe in the form of the soil, maybe the sewage, I mean the output of the aquaculture ponds. That again is a trouble in if it is directly given into the natural water bodies without a pre-treatment. Largely because we have seen there have been several outbreaks of diseases, particularly in the shrimp industry previously, and most often the problem arises because we have not been very vigilant on how to properly treat our waters, how to properly treat them before it is being sent into the natural water bodies. So the disease that my fish is carrying, the fish of my farms are carrying, in most cases, those virulent or those virulent causes, those bacteria, it may ultimately get root into the nature, and from there again to another farm, and that is how the outbreaks occurs. So these are some of the problems that we encounter in aquaculture, and many of these problems can always be taken care of, can always be eradicated by proper practices, by better management practices. Now, so this is almost the same what I was discussing, like application of antibiotics and hormones as a drug which impacts human population if it is not applied it at proper levels. Even there is a list of antibiotics which are already banned for use in aquaculture. Then the excessive use of feed, excessive use of growth hormones, growth factors may lead to sometimes eutrophication of the pond. Green blooms may appear in the pond, and if you do not maintain the water and the soil quality properly, if you don't maintain the feeding properly, then also the same problems will arise. And what the farmers do is to get back there, to get a proper water quality, to get a proper growth. They always want to revive the situation, and in doing that, uh, sometimes they go on applying chemicals, which may not be always from an organic source or substances from organic sources, and that actually further aggravates the situation. It adds to the it adds to the load of the pond, and ultimately impacting the fish growth, uh, the production. In a way, if this goes on, like if several farmers of an area goes on doing like this, of course the production will be affected, and finally the food security issues will be impacted. And addition of too much of these substances like antibiotics, hormones, and non-scheduled drugs, and all these things will uh, have a long-term impact on human health as well. Now we'll now look into the trade, actually the seafood trade, how it occurs. Apart from the domestic market, uh, we have an export market as well. Now, in the export market, what we have seen, even in the domestic market also nowadays, we have seen that people have raised concerns. The consumers nowadays have raised concerns about several issues, which already I have, some of them are already I have discussed. And there are certain other issues which were beyond our like imagination. Okay, this could be an issue for nowadays for the consumers. Like one is that overfishing. So consumers nowadays are telling that, okay, I will buy food. I will buy seafood from only those companies, only from those producing companies or producer companies, who ensures that the product, that the harvest is not overfished. So they say that you should ensure that it is not an overfished population. They say that the harvesting should be done, if it is from sea catch, it should be done with sufficient uh, actions being taken, or sufficient actions are being initiated to ensure that there is minimal bycatch. They say that, okay, you should have total exclusion devices in your gears, in your fishing gears, so that the seafood that I am taking should not be made available to the consumers, should not be made available to the consumers or human beings at the cost of some other organisms being killed, like the turtles. So you should have a total exclusion device attached to your gears. They say that whatever culture practices you follow, it's okay, fine, but it should not have an impact on the habitat. It should not have an impact on the pollution status of the water body where you are culturing the fish. So these are some of the issues that consumers nowadays are have started raising, apart from the issues related to their health, which involves, as I said earlier, also, which involves presence of pesticides, presence of antibiotics. So there are, so aquaculture nowadays although contributes more than 50% of the seafood to the human population, but because of the faulty practices, because of our uh, negligence, I would say, we have been introducing chemicals which are not suitable for human consumption. We have been doing things which is not good for the environment, which is not good for the for certain species of fishes, and also which is destroying the habitat, which is impacting the breeding grounds of the fishes. So we have been, in fact, we also have been excluding, we have been killing some non-target species, which we should not have done, because all of them are important to us. So now let us look at actually how the problem comes up, eventually how it impacts us. So I will be discussing about, I will be showing you some data about the problem that antibiotics can cause to the aquaculture sector in our country. Like if you see the top, the top part of the slide, you see that FDA's it's a data on the Food and Drug Administration of United States, and the shrimp refusals being made by them based on the presence of banned antibiotics in the shrimps. So they have categorized 13 countries from where this type of banned antibiotics are being identified in the shrimps. And out of the total amount of refusals that has happened, 88% comes from three countries, and those three countries are China, India, and Vietnam. Interestingly, India account for 53.6% of those, refusals, and all of them are because of the presence of antibiotics. So this shows that not only are we harming the human population because of the use of antibiotics in the shrimp aquaculture system, but also we are economically being impacted, because once the produce is which has been exported to United States, if that is refused, if it is rejected by the importer, obviously it's a big economic loss for the country, for the exporter, and eventually this will go down the lane, and the farmers will be impacted. So this is it's a ground reality, that is a problem we are facing, and that what brings us to the issues of biosecurity that we should follow in the aquaculture farms, and only adopting biosecurity can we achieve the global food security issues. So antibiotics, why US FDA, or even for us, for the food security agencies, why they stress on the for not using, why they are stressing on the banning of antibiotics, why they want that antibiotics should not be present in the food products. That is basically because these antibiotics brings about uh, development of certain species of bacteria that gets resistant to those antibiotics over the period of time, and eventually we'll find a time will come when we'll be suffering from diseases, and whatever antibiotics being used on us to kill the bacteria or to kill the causative agent, it won't act on them because of the development of antibiotic resistance. So this antibiotic resistance formation in the bacterial population is a dangerous issue, and that can be prevented by, if you want to prevent that, you have to stop using antibiotic in the aquaculture system. Not only aquaculture system, it should not be used, in fact, in any food product. And there is a list, as I said, of banned antibiotics which should not be used. So the main issue is development of uh, antibiotic resistance in bacteria, and to prevent that, we should stop using antibiotics in aquaculture systems. Apart from that is another problem which I already showed, that the problem in aquaculture is the use of agrochemicals. Now, what happens to an agrochemical if it is used in aquaculture system is it enters into different intermediate media before it comes to human beings. So whenever agrochemicals are used in agriculture farms or any or say orchards, they somehow they will always find its route to the uh, aquatic ecosystem as well, and from there the fishes, whatever is there inside that ecosystem, they will be exposed to these agrochemicals. They will eventually accumulate these pesticides in their muscles, and will finally, when human beings are being given these products to eat, they will be also exposed to these agrochemicals, and it will cause severe health effects. Now, agrochemicals are something that is beyond the control of the aquaculturists themselves, because it may come out from the agricultural runoff waters, it may come out from orchard runoff waters. But of course, if proper precautionary measures can be taken in terms of selection of site for the aquaculture pond, or if you somehow if you can have a system where the water doesn't come directly into the pond but rather into intermediate system of canal or drain, then of course we can take care of these agrochemicals as well. The next thing is the pollution caused by the heavy metals, the presence of toxic chemicals. This is nowadays causing a lot of issue, especially in aquaculture produce, because effluents from industry also may find route into the aquatic ecosystem. And some of the heavy metals, as you could see in this slide, are arsenic, cadmium, lead, chromium, mercury, nickel. So they not only find route into the ecosystem, but also eventually into the fish muscles, where they get concentrated. And we know that these toxic hazardous chemicals have carcinogenic, mutagenic, and genotoxicity in humans. Neurotoxicity can come up. So this is all going to affect human health if such contaminated products are being consumed by are being provided to us or by are consumed by us. There are others, which is other issues also, like cigarette butts. It causes a huge issue nowadays, because what smokers do is, after consumption of cigarettes, they throw away the butts. Now these butts are, they find their route in, even into the ponds, into the agriculture fields, and that again is a issue. Even there are incidences when you can find this in the being accumulated in the intestinal tracts of animals. Another issue of concern is the microplastics, presence of very small particles of microplastics that are gaining root into the agriculture fields, into the aquatic systems, and eventually even into the fish body. There have been extensive studies nowadays done on the presence of microplastics, even in human blood, even in the human system, which has gained its root in human beings. So these are some of the toxic substances which are hazardous to us. Again, as I said, biosecurity protocols are the only solution by which we can maintain a, a good quality of the product, and we can ensure food security. Some of the regulatory bodies worldwide who are working on these issues, who have been propagating the adoption of biosecurity protocols, includes the Marine Products Export Development Authority of India, which is which is MPEDA. They are it's a authority under the Ministry of Commerce, Government of India, and what they do is they uh, they actually promote and they propagate. On one side, they promote the biosecurity protocols as is sought or as is wanted by the importing countries, and accordingly they dissipate that knowledge, that requirements to the farmers, so as to get a very good product which is safe and which is also internationally accepted by the buyers. And since we are also a part of the WTO, World Trade Organization, we are also bound by some of the regulations as put forward by OIE or IPPC, even by the food safety standards as put forward by Codex. For export of products, the Export Inspection Council, under the Ministry of Commerce, they actually look after the issues. They are concerned with the issuing of the health certificates before a material is exported from our country, and for that they get some of the basic testings done for the products, which include uh, testing of heavy metals, testing of antibiotics, presence of pesticides, and apart from that, there are several bacteria which are not supposed to be present in the product, which like Listeria, Salmonella, and they look for fecal indicator organisms also in the produce. So to avoid that, the modern concept of the food safety, they say that it should not only start at the gate of the factories where the product is processed, but it should rather start right from the farm level. And there are several voluntary standards or private standards that each of these companies can adopt to comply with the requirements of the importing countries. Some of them are shown here, which includes international featured standards or British Retail Consortium standards, then Food Safety and System Certification 22,000 standards. So all of them have one common goal, that is to ensure throughout the production step of a seafood, you should ensure that the product, the best quality of the product is being given to the consumers without any health hazard to them. And we should start right from the farm levels, so that right from the, maybe if required, from the hatchery levels, to ensure that there is no deviation during the whole value chain until the produce reaches our consumers. So these are some of the voluntary standards that can be adopted, that is being adopted by many of our companies in our country, just to ensure that the produce reaches the price in the European and US markets. Now, one important topic I will be telling you is that whenever this such incidences of rejection occurs, it is almost always the factory people who are being blamed for the presence of, say, antibiotics or maybe heavy metals, maybe maybe like presence of, say, Vibrio, presence of Salmonella. But it is not always that the companies are only responsible, but even the farmers are also responsible for it, because the some of these contaminants comes directly from the farmers, and the processors have not much to do about it. So what these regulatory agencies, what they suggest is to have a traceability of the produce, that the produce that is being exported, or the produce that is marketed in our country, even within in the domestic market, even it should be marked in the way that it is traceable right up to the farm level. Here is an example of how that can be done. That is, suppose you are marketing a fresh salmon, or a product of it. So you have to mark it. You have to put a specific code. You have to code that product in such a way, or its ingredients in such a way, that whenever any complaint comes against it, against the final produce, that can be traced back to the source. Suppose I am having a fish from a particular pond from in a particular area or district of our country. So we can give a specific code for that produce. Even we can code the ingredients used for preparation of, for example, here it is shown as stuffed salmon. So we can have the ingredients coded from where it has been sourced. As suppose two ingredients are used, so each one of them can be coded, and the final product that is produced, that is also coded. And everything you do, even the packaging material that is being used for that value-added product, can also be coded from where it has been sourced. And suppose it has already reached the consumer or the customer, and there is a problem arising out of it. Maybe so some heavy metals are present, so maybe some antibiotics have been detected, or at the most, the consumer has suffered some sort of health hazard because of presence of the bacteria. Then whatever complaint the consumer comes up with, that can be addressed very easily if we trace back the codes. If we go through the codes, we can trace which uh, from which company it is, or which country it is being sourced, which company produced it, which date it has been produced, which batch was the production done. And then once you identify the batch and the production date, you can go back to the source from where that bacteria could have come. So it is not necessarily the fish; it may be from the even from the ingredients. So you need to go back and press it back gradually and find out the root cause. And it is very important for us to identify the root cause, because that is the concept on which most of the biosecurity protocols are based, so that we can take enough necessary actions to prevent future occurrences of that. And even within, when you are producing the value-added products, during the process also, the inline checks and total, in fact, total quality management systems should be in place to ensure that such things doesn't happen. Even if it happens, it should be traceable at what point, at what level such deviations have occurred, so that the particular contaminant is present in the product. So now we come to the part of biosecurity and how we can prevent whatever problems I've been discussing, how to prevent that. Now, biosecurity will be defined as the measures or the methods that can be adopted by us to secure our environment from any diseases. Uh, and this biosecurity measures, as I said earlier, also can be adopted right from the hatchery levels. It can be from the hatchery, from the nurseries, and even at the grow-out farms. Because once it reaches the factory, we in factory systems you already have a quality management system in place. So they have a hazard analysis critical control point, or HACCP system in place, that can take care of everything else, or the cross contamination or post processing contaminations. But there are certain things which comes indigenously along with the fish body, which is very difficult to control, and that can only be done by adopting biosecurity measures, and that has to be done at hatchery levels, nursery levels, even in the grow-out farms. Now, in once you adopt a biosecurity protocol or a biosecurity system, that will help us to ensure that the food is safe. It will ensure economic gain, because once you adopt it, you can reduce the rejections, and in that way, you gain economically. You are actually by adopting biosecurity, you are actually doing good to the even to the cultured species. You are doing good to the animal itself, and you are doing good to the environment as well. Now, biosecurity have the hazards that can come. That comes from it can come from the water supply system, as I said, like waters that can be drawn into the farms that may already be contaminated with a virus that has outbroke in adjacent farm. So it is the water supply which is one of the major source of hazard in terms of biosecurity. It may be the eggs or the spawns or the fingerlings that we are procuring from nurseries. It can be the feed that is being given to the fish. It can be the pests and animals that can enter into the pond system. And it can be the aerosols even from the industries. It can be or any material that is being delivered into the farm system. So along with it can come. It can come even from the visitors. It can come even from the staffs, the equipments that we are using, and the practices of fish husbandry that we are following. So anything can be a source of potential disease, potential problem for the fish in a aquaculture system. Now, if you look into the different facets of it, see, biosecurity can be maintained in our aquaculture ponds through proper inspection of the inputs, particularly in terms of the fishes that we bring in or the fish seeds that we bring in. If we properly inspect them, if we ensure that okay, it is a specific pathogen-free organisms, it is free of we can go for a PCR testing of particular viruses. Then the problem, one of the issues is that is the virus being present or a disease being present inherently in the fish that can be completely ruled out before it is being stocked in the pond. So before you even stock the fish in pond, you have to ensure that you have to inspect it properly. You have to ensure that it is free of any pathogen. If it can be done, then the occurrence of diseases in the pond system can be reduced. And if you can reduce the occurrence of disease in pond, then naturally the farmers are not at all required to apply any of the chemicals in it, any drugs, any antibiotics to the system, because you are already trying to take measures so that there is no disease outbreak taking place. If even if it occurs, then you have to go for before you before you stock the pond with your fishes, maintain a proper quarantine system. You must have a proper visitor policy. Suddenly, normally it is a very common practice that people from outside, they come into your pond system, they come inside, and they go into into the pond water, going for testing and all. So you should have a proper policy on that. That every visitor that comes to my pond should first dip their foot in a potassium permanganate water, should sanitize themselves, and then only you give them entry into your pond system. You can, if required, even hatchery systems, even if required, you should have a PPE in place, food baths in place. Vehicles that are entering into your area, into your arena, should also be cleaned as and when necessary. The staff should be made properly aware about their personal hygiene. You should ensure that whatever the feed you are giving to the fish, that have you get the feed even tested whether it contains the perfect amount of protein required for the species, whether it has any additives which is not acceptable by the food regulatory bodies, whether it has any antioxidant added to the feed which is not acceptable, or which is present in limits above the acceptable scores. So that has to be ensured before you choose any particular feed for fishes. So all these things, if you take care, all these things are part of the biosecurity protocols, and that can always be done. And the first and foremost thing that every farmer should look at in a biosecurity system is that the source of water. So before you allow your water to be taken into the pond, that should be treated. At times, there are reservoir systems, there are common reservoir systems, but the water can be kept for some days that can be treated with either by chlorinations or other disinfectants can be used to treat the water before it is finally being taken into the aquaculture ponds. So that actually ensures that no viruses, no bacteria are present in the water. Apart from that, apart from that disinfection, you should also ensure proper protection of your pond from certain crustaceans like crabs, like rodents. So what happens is that these such type of animals will act as carriers of viruses. So their entry into the pond should also be restricted. And to do that, you have to have a proper uh, system of guarding your ponds with, if required, with plastics. You can dig into the pond dikes, and you can have a physical barrier being constructed on that. Even birds can be a problem. So for that also, sometimes sometimes the farmers go for bird fencing, so that the birds do not either come into your pond and drop a diseased fish from another pond, or if your pond has an outbreak, this bird should not come and pick it up and then like fly away into the adjoining pond and drop it there. In that way, there is every chance for the viruses to propagate from one pond to the other. So these are some of the biosecurity protocols that we can take care of. Like as I said, the first part is the hatchery operations. So in the hatchery operations, some of the areas where we can adopt the biosecurity management practices includes like the facility entrance, where we can ensure that that the water must be properly, sorry, where the proper sanitation of the hatchery workers should be ensured. We should ensure that the food that is being used is free of diseases. We should ensure the total structure, the infrastructure of the hatchery is properly sanitized, properly cleaned, to avoid any growth of bacteria or any growth of any cross contamination by any viruses. And water management, as I had been telling, is very important. The water should be treated properly, should be filtered properly, especially in hatchery operations, to avoid any outbreaks. Like here are some of the pictures where you can see where you can adopt food dips to sanitize your feet, where you can use 50 to 100 ppm of chlorinated water. This is an example of, I hope you can see the cursor. So this is an example of the deeps, where the wheels of the vehicles that are coming into your home can be disinfected as well. And sometimes you can, if you don't have this type of tips, you can go for direct disinfection of your car wheels. This is the water management system, where you should have good water treatment systems, where either using chlorine, ozone, UV, or ultrafiltration techniques, which kills the pathogens. And in that way, you can reduce the outbreak of diseases caused by bacteria. And if you can achieve it, as I said, well, if there is no disease outbreak, there is not any necessity of applying antibiotics. This is the maturation of the broodstock state, where also you can maintain proper sanitary actions. Even in the other, in the, as I said, the infrastructure facilities, whatever equipments you are using in a hatchery system, that everything should be cleaned before the day, sorry, after the day's work is over, and even when you are beginning the day, disinfected them and then go for using it. So this, and you have to like, you have to keep your materials in designated areas, and it's not like spilling it all around the hatchery. It's not like that. You have to keep your every equipment, every seed handling or fish handling systems or equipments, everything should be kept in proper areas. Everything should be disinfected. They should be cleaned properly to avoid any form of cross contaminations. Even if you are going for preparation of the natural foods, care should be taken for them also, because remember, even Artemia is a crustacean in itself. So if you are not taking proper care of that system where you grow the natural food, that can also be a source of your potential diseases. Next is the biosecurity in grow-out operation. The grow-out operation, it can be largely, it can be on 8 areas. Particularly, first thing is the water source. As I said, the water. If you take the water inside your pond, go for its treatment. If you have a reservoir, it's very good. If it doesn't have a reservoir, you can take the water into your system, and then you can go for proper treatment using chlorine. And selection of the seed is very important also. It should be, as I said, prefer, you should get your seed tested for specific pathogens, and it is always a good habit of like purchasing them from certified hatcheries who are known for producing specific pathogen-free seeds. And also you can go for proper feed management. Proper stocking density has to be maintained. When you are preparing the pond, it should be done in way that uh, the bottom soil should be cleaned, proper should be removed completely, should be properly lined. So all these things has to be done uh, to have a good biosecure pond. So these are the steps, some of the things you can do for fry selection. Like you can go for PCR testing of your seeds, or you can go for testing the presence for first presence of any bacterial pathogens. You can go for treatment of your water resources before it is being taken into the pond. If you are having a reservoir, then you go for treatment of the water first in the reservoirs, and then you allow it to come to your uh, ponds. And then, of course, this is a green water system. This can also be adopted for your culture system, which is it's a closed one, where you are where you do not want that the where you water exchanges are being made limited, and you can ensure that the cross contamination doesn't occur. And this is the normal step of pond preparation, which can be adopted. This is how you can flow your fill, and you need to remove the black soils from the bottom. You have to go for proper liming activities uh, to ensure. Now, liming, is very important because it not only maintains the pH of the soil as well as the water, but also lime do itself in itself, lime is having uh, some antimicrobial activity. So, and then again the pH, since it modifies it buffers the pH of the water as well as the soil, this is having an impact on growth of pathogens as well. So liming is good for the proper liming is very important for the ponds, particularly during the preparatory stages, and also during the culture period, liming is important. And if you are using pond liners, then it can reduce your preparation time for the pond as well as the cost. And however, before you go for using these liners, you need to disinfect them. And liners are expected. Actually, it has been seen that the biofloc technology that is applied for shrimp farming, they obviously uses HDPE liners, and it reduces the seepage as well. So this is a good option for pond preparation as well. Apart from that, you can have crab fences attached to your pond, because crabs are, particularly for shrimp culture system, crabs are a notorious agent because they carry the virus stored. Most of the white spot bacteriovirus, they may be a source of white spot bacteriovirus even. So they cause these viruses to enter into your pond. So you have to provide crab fences. You should add some bird fences as well. I mean, to scare the birds away, so that the birds do not contaminate your water by bringing in diseased fish from outside. That can also be there. You can have a barrier to aerosols also. Sometimes the aerators that run in the adjacent pond may create aerosols, and along with those aerosols, they can bring in the viruses and the bacteria to the adjacent pond. So that is again a problem. So you can have aerosol barriers as well in between ponds to prevent the flow of the viral particle from one pond to the other. You should have a hand washing area, so that every time, and even a food dip, so that every time a person enters into your pond system, we have his hand properly sanitized and his food properly sanitized in the food dip. And then you should take utmost care of your fries when you're stocking them. Should give proper acclimatization period, as well as when you are bringing the fry bags, disinfect the bags as a whole. That is necessary because when you are bringing the bags from hatcheries or the suppliers, when they are sending the bags, those bags from may be also a carrier of viruses and bacteria. So biosecurity, in fact, is taking care of everything, every source, every inputs that can be a potential source of your bacteria. Even the feed also you can when you are bringing in the feed, when you're distributing the feed, before you do that, you decide properly as to what is the composition of the feed, what are the ingredients or additives that is being given with it. If you're using an immunostimulant, if you're using a vitamin, a probiotic, consult your technician, and go to, if any problem arises, go to the nearest laboratories, get your feed tested, the chemicals tested, whether they are acceptable to the regulatory agencies or food regulatory agencies or not, to avoid any issues of rejection, any outbreaks of diseases in the pond system, and ultimately to ensure food safety for the consumer also. So what is water management issues? As I said, liming is a big, it helps a lot in maintaining proper soil water conditions in the aquaculture system. Now, these are some of the things that can be applied when you are talking of hazard analysis critical or critical control point or HACCP principles on farm. Like some of the critical points that are there in a farm system is the site security, which uh, which includes the wheel dip as well as the food dip, which I have already showed you some of the pictures. And then personal hygiene, all that also has been discussed already. So proper protective clothing should be used. Hand hygiene is very important. Water system, which should be, whatever water you take into your pond system must be sanitized, must be disinfected, because it is a critical control point. Equipment should be properly cleaned. The equipment includes feeding trays, feeding equipments, cast nets, even the sampling equipments or the editors. Everything should be properly taken care of. And the presence of any organic matter in and around the pond, even in the pond bottom, whatever is there in organic matters, that should be disposed of, that should be reduced as much as possible in and around the vicinity of the pond. And the control of carriers. Carriers, as I said, birds are one of the bird can bring in, species, disease species in your pond. The biggest carrier are the crustaceans, and one of them is the crabs. So you should have proper crab fences put up in your pond to avoid them from entering it. And finally, the terminal disinfection program can also be adopted in the farms. Now, next is the critical limit. As should have limits within which all the hazards must be restricted, and the proper monitoring is very important. Without proper monitoring, nothing can be done, and all the things what you are doing in a biosecure pond, that should also be recorded or documented. If any deviation occurs, that necessary corrections have to be adopted. These are the principles of HACCP that should be done every time and then. So, like, since you are producing, since you are growing fish, should our fish, our produce, our crustaceans of the streams, whatever we are producing, we should treat them as our own child. Like the way we treat our babies, the same way we should treat them as well. And so, we should treat them in a proper way. And should treat them as our own child, and the way we handle them, we should handle our produce the same way. Proper dressing, proper hygienic practices, proper personal hygiene should be maintained. And these are some of the graphical representation as to what should be done in a pond and what should not. Like here you see, we should not litter the pond site the way it is being done. The toilet should be made in a separate area completely. If you are having other animals in the farm, keep them away from the uh, pond area and have them have a physical barrier made so that they don't get easy access to it. You keep your chemicals, the lime, whatever you are using in the farm, separately in a shed, and should not, like, there should not be any chance of it being spilled over into the pond system. Even if there are weeds that are growing in your pond, clean it properly on time. Don't allow like other animals to float around, roam around the pond. That should be avoided completely. Whatever equipments that you use in the pond, sanitize it properly, clean them properly. Most importantly, if any, in case of any death of any fish or any outbreaks, you should take proper quarantine measure for your pond for the species. And if any dead fishes are there, dead shrimps are there, dispose it properly. Don't simply throw it away in the natural water bodies, or don't throw it away in the adjacent areas. You can either dug up in the soil and put it inside, and bury it in the soil, so as to prevent any further contamination of the adjacent areas. Now, this is the last slide of today, and these are some of the pictures of a biosecure pond. Of course, these are related to shrimp farming. So as you could see, the pond sites are all properly kept clean, and this is the entry of the farm. At the entry point, there is a room, and they have kept. See, here is a box which contains potassium permanganate solution. This is meant for disinfection of your feet, and then there is an area here where you can disinfect your hands. The toilet is completely separated in between the farm and this roadside. There is a canal being provided, which acts as a beautiful barrier for movement of anybody inside your farms. Inside, if you look into the farm system, there are you see bird fences are provided on the top to scare away the birds. There are see all around the pond. The barriers are being provided, fences are being provided, nets are being given, so that nothing from outside, no carriers from outside can enter into your pond system. And the pond dikes are kept absolutely clean, and every measure is being adopted to make it biosecure. If there is no disease outbreak, there is no requirement of any or application of any antibiotics or any drugs. And if it is not being done, so it will not be present in the fish. Naturally, the chances of rejection of the material will be reduced manifold. So with that, I will end my presentation. So I think if the participants have any question there, they can ask me. Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
So if participants, if you have any questions, please ask the sir.
Yes, please. Participants, you can ask any question, please.
Any questions? Or you can type it in the chat as well. But the issue. So I think there are no questions.
Okay. So
Thank you. Thank you on behalf of NETCL. Thank you on behalf of participants. This was really a nice session. Hope everyone has taken benefits from the same. We will conclude this session and we'll
yeah.
join tomorrow again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hamida madam, and all participants. I have a question. I will just answer it. I think there's a question in the chat box. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. It's a question by Saravanan, who's asking any predator which affects the contamination in the fish ponds and causing serious issues. Yes, as I said, that the crabs are the biggest predators. So their entry, they normally come into the pond system. So not only they predate, but also at the same time they can contaminate the water. They are known to be carriers of viruses, and in particularly they are a nuisance when it comes to shrimp culture system. So it is a big issue. Apart from that, otters, they find their way into the pond for eating fishes. They can be a carrier as well. There are so many rodents they can enter. So predators are a problem always. Even the birds are also predates on the fishes. A lot of them, cormorants are there, which predates, and not only they predate, but they also bring in viruses and bacteria from outside. Anybody else? Amita madam, I think it is done. I think.
So there is one more question in the chat.
Okay, is there any vector? Yeah, crab is a vector. Crab is, as I said, crabs are vectors. This is in terms of, as I am telling, this in terms of mainly streams, maybe Venami and black tigers.
So thank you.
Thank you all. So I'll log off.
Yes, sir.